the SM Media Podcast Network.
Hi folks, and welcome to the latest episode of the Refs Review, part of the SM Media Podcast Network. I'm Scott McPike, always a pleasure to be your host, and we've got a fairly busy show. Do you remember 2017, I think it was, when that was the last time that both Rangers and Celtic were beaten on the same day? It's an interesting feat. I think that's 8 years since that's happened. So again, this is probably quite a historic weekend. Obviously, before we get into discussing the weekend's events, want to thank our sponsors, Roxburgh Group, Beeks and Exactrack Concrete Flooring, for their support in helping the podcast grow every week. And it's always a pleasure to be joined by the two guys who make it all happen. First of all, Des Roach.
I'm very good, Scott. Good to be back in your company.
Always a pleasure, and always a pleasure to be joined by Steve Conroy.
Likewise, glad to be here.
Well, we did say, obviously, it was a historic weekend. We have made our opinions quite clear on a few of the incidents yesterday, but we're more than happy to go through it again. We'll start with the Saturday afternoon game. Hibs 2, Celtic 1. Celtic obviously beaten in the league by Hibs, who are absolutely flying at the moment, look pretty good for top six. We have three incidents that we're going to cover in this game. The obvious one that I want to start with is the one that's got everybody talking. Now, I think this is a lot more complex than whether the ball was in or was it out. We're obviously talking about the equaliser that Celtic scored. Dyson Maeda scored, that Alistair Johnstone was deemed to have not kept the ball in play. Des, I don't even want to even ask, was the ball in play or not, because I've seen about a million different angles. Most of them suggest the ball was out. The way that camera works and optical illusions, as it were, it's not the fact that was the ball in or out or not. For me, the issue here is, why did VAR get involved in this?
Scott, see, to be perfectly honest, like you, like Steve, like we've seen this sent to us a million times, and there is no one single picture that is inclusive. Now, I would go back to, you look at the World Cup in
Yeah, that's the one that came to my
Japan.
head.
So
Yeah.
It's the silhouette of the ball which is there.
Mhm.
But even I can't decide on that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you guys are exactly the same. So see, if you can't decide, you can't call the ball out of play. You can't make that decision. And unfortunately, Alan Muir seems to have got himself embroiled in a few situations.
Yes.
And I'm not a Celtic fan, I'm not a Rangers fan, I'm not a Hibs fan. And that's what it's got to go to. It's got to go to factual evidence. There is no factual evidence, and that is the whole ridiculous decision of VAR and what we have in Scotland. We do not have enough cameras to cover it. We do not have enough goal line technology. I don't want to use the word, but it's a guess.
Well, that's exactly what Brendan Rodgers said, and I kind of see where he's coming from. Now, I don't agree with Brendan Rodgers obviously going on the way he did with the referee. I'm surprised that he was allowed to do that and not get any punishment, but that's maybe something for another day. Steve, Des touches on something very interesting there when he mentions goal line technology. Goal line technology answers this question, but we don't have it. We don't have a camera in the goal line. We don't have really any indication of knowing factually if this was in or out. Therefore, VAR has guessed, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's not a nice word. Now, same as lots of people, I assume, I suppose, but ultimately I'm guessing that the ball was out.
Yes.
It cannot be categorically proven one way or the other, which means VAR can't get involved to overturn the referee's decision. Whether the ball was in or out, that's up to the on-field team, and VAR cannot, unless there's some miraculous angle that we've not seen, VAR cannot categorically call that ball out. It's not possible. So I'm assuming that the ball was out, but I can't prove it.
The other issue is here, though, the assistant referees called it in.
But the assistant referee, to be fair to him, he's called it in because he's not in a position to call it out, because Alan Johnson's foot is between the lino and the ball. He can't tell for definite, so he can't call it out because he can't see it.
Yeah, and that's the
one thing. The one thing I disagree with Brendan Rodgers, that the assistant had the best view in the stadium. He probably had one of the worst views, but he did what the only course of action he could take was not to give it because he couldn't see it.
Well, the other interesting thing that Brendan Rodgers says, Des, is we need to see evidence the ball was out. Now that I've seen a lot of Hibs fans, I've seen a lot of fans of other clubs saying there's definitely evidence. I've seen friend of the show, Ewan Cameron, say the ball is 100% out. We've seen you brought up that Japan-Spain game where the best minds in the world could not decipher whether that ball was in or out in a World Cup group stage game to get into the knockout stages of the biggest tournament in the world. See this of that ball was definitely out. There is no way of knowing whether that ball was in or out. No. Therefore, for me, that goal should not have been disallowed by VAR. If the referee or the linesman calls it out, okay, fair enough. It's the fact that the VAR, and we've said about Alan Muir, he's making too many mistakes for my liking, making too many guesses, as it were. I'm not calling for anybody to lose their job, but I think there is a serious question to be asked now. How many times is this individual, and I'm again, you obviously are maybe going to have a different opinion than me here, but he's making a lot of big decisions in big games that are impacting. That people will say this game, Celtic have won the league, it's irrelevant. Hibs win that game. Hibs lose 2 points. Hibs could have lost 2 points with that being a draw, and therefore the top six is looking very different this afternoon. So it's a game. It's a massive decision.
All that aside, you can't prove it. We cannot go on guesses. And people forget that the line extends vertically as well. It's not a two-dimensional thing. So again, the silhouette of the ball, we just don't know if there was a tiny spliff of that ball overlying a tiny spliff of the line, then it's in. And it doesn't matter how many stills you see. We don't have the technology to prove one way or the other. And there's no point in greeting about it. We never will have that technology.
No. We will never have that.
No, at that ball, you could not prove categorically that ball was out. So the goal should have stood.
Yeah, I think
that's not putting your Celtic hat on. That's not you being a Celtic fan. That's you just saying categorically that's the correct decision.
Absolutely, and no matter what colour hat I've got on, I'm saying, to me, I'm assuming that ball was out. But you can't go on an assumption.
No, absolutely not. Do you think for a minute you would have accepted if I'd shouted to you and went, Steve, that ball's out, and you came across and looked at it? You would say, there's no chance. I can't tell that.
No, I wouldn't be taking your advice.
And by the way, I would not be calling you across.
I know.
Well, there was a couple of incidents, obviously, that were obviously brought up in the Hibs Celtic game as well, taken away from the goal. Just before that, we had a tussle in the Hibs box between Cameron Carter-Vickers and Kukarevich, which I'm quite glad I pronounced that right. I've been practicing that all morning. There was a bit of a coming together. It looked to be a bit of a tussle. There's a wee bit of similarity to ones we've discussed over the past few weeks. Des, I'll start with you in this. There was no penalty, not overturned. A lot of people are saying it should have been a penalty. Where are you with this one?
What is and what isn't a penalty? When you see these things, we see it every week. If you go down to brass tacks, then you're going to have 10 penalties every single game. I think there was probably enough in it for me. There was probably enough of a hold. So yeah, I think it should have been a penalty.
Steve, we've seen them given, we've seen them not given. We'd obviously spoke about it just after the game, and we'd obviously put out. It's one of those that I think you can have a different opinion. You can see it as a penalty. You can say it's not a penalty. I don't think there's like a clear and obvious error though for VAR to overturn it. That's the thing.
I'm the opposite for Des. I don't think it was a penalty, but it's one of those ones. It's in the grey area, and no matter how much people greet about it, there are some decisions that are purely subjective. and there's no science in it at all. That's one of them. I wouldn't.
But see, a grey area, then there's doubt.
Oh no, that's the whole point. Yeah, there's doubt. So you would have given it. I wouldn't have. Matter of opinion, nothing to do with VAR.
No, it's nothing to do with VAR.
Yep, and we will get those incidents all the time, and there's nothing you can do about it. And there's no right or wrong answer. There's nothing scientific. You're giving it. I'm not. Fair play.
There was another one that's just been coming to attention just while Sky, obviously we're recording this just after St Johnstone Hearts game. Sky spent a wee bit of time on this. I don't remember this being a big issue at the time, but it turns out there was a VAR check for a slope tackle on Bashiri. Have you seen that?
No, not seen that.
I can't remember it being brought up live, and it's something that, again, if MD's got a clip, send it in. But from what I've seen, nothing's caught my eye about it, but I know they were talking about it in Sky for a wee while. But massive result for Hibs, obviously. Celtic's run unbeaten comes to an end. That's their second loss of the season, obviously, in the league. Still 13 points clear, though, because as we'll get into, Rangers again, we'll probably spend a wee bit of time in Rangers later on, because I think it is probably a big issue in Scottish football at the moment. There was a couple of incidents in their 2-0 defeat to St Mirren. We'll start with the first one that has got a lot of people talking, the red card shown to Hamza Agaman. Kevin Clancy obviously shown a red card to Hamza Agaman, and then VAR overturned to a yellow. Steve, I'll start with you in this one. It's one of those, in my opinion, that it's very, very tough. It's probably, you say it as well, the orange card. It's very, very interesting to see how you look at this. What do you think?
Well, I think we're at variance on this one again. I don't think it's a red card, but I'm not going to argue with Des, who thinks it is a red card. And you get 10 different refs in the room, you'll get 10 different opinions on it. It is purely a matter of opinion. I don't think it's a red card. My annoyance is, after me saying that it's a matter of opinion, VAR getting involved means that their opinion is taking precedence over the refs, and that's not what VAR's for. So I don't have an objection to the card being overturned, but I don't think it was a clear and obvious enough error for VAR to get involved.
Steve, why? Because a lot of people have said, "Oh, his foot's off the ground." My thought of it was, it's a naughty tackle. I think a yellow is. I think it's certainly worth a yellow. It might be worth more if you see it a different way. I think camera angle is quite important, because there are camera angles like the one with Leighton Clarkson, which was the same stadium with the same referee. You can look at it a different way and maybe come to a different outcome. But I think with this one, I think that what helps Agaman here is that he looks to be in control with his other leg, and he doesn't make contact. So does that help him?
No, it doesn't. He doesn't scissor him. He doesn't anything. Yeah. He's in control. He's not launched himself at it. The foot, and not that it's it's not a silver bullet or a smoking gun rather. His foot only comes up a wee bit after the tackle's pretty much completed. It's a bad one. It's a naughty one. I wouldn't like that tackle myself, but it wasn't a red.
Des, make the case for the prosecution.
Make the case for the prosecution. I just think that the tariff that we've set this year, I think that ticked the boxes. Kevin Clancy had a really good view on it. He was right in front of it. He could see the way the game is flowing. I think Grant Irvin was wrong to get involved, purely because it's not a clear and obvious error. So the way that Igaman he's jumped into it, and I know we can try and mitigate it to saying like straight leg and where it's went. You can't tackle like that. See it was a red card. Nobody could have any complaint across that whatsoever. And as soon as I seen it, I thought red card. And I was actually with a friend when it came through who's a Rangers fan, and his words to me were, "Oh, he's off." So
accepting all that, but you're saying you can't tackle like that. We're doing away with the art of tackling.
Where has he got the ball though? What has he done?
Not every reasonable tackle will get the ball. That's why we're saying it's a yellow card. He's been reckless, but he hasn't gone out to injure anybody. He's not endangered anybody. I think he's yellow, maybe another high tariff yellow, but I don't think that there was a clear and obvious enough error in that for VAR to get involved. I think
so
purely
exactly,
opinion.
As you and I are debating this between us, right? Why is VAR getting involved?
Well, exactly. It's there to correct clear and obvious errors.
So it's an
not
opinion.
there to pose an opinion.
Yeah.
I am very
And the
intrigued.
opinion is your opinion yellow, my opinion red. Would you shout to me, Des, you need to change that?
No.
And I wouldn't be shouting to you, Steve, would I need to change that? In my opinion, it's a red card. Your opinion's a yellow card.
I think the audio in these two games that we've discussed already is going to be extremely interesting when it comes out.
Yeah.
To see how they come to these decisions.
Yeah, we were just discussing during the week whether we still actually had an active VAR manager. It might be interesting with some of these things that are raging to hear from him.
Well, that's exactly because we brought up John Moss, didn't we?
Aye.
And he soon fled to Australia. We've now brought Martin Atkinson in. Have you heard anything from Martin?
I've heard that people.
Not a word. Not a word. I actually forgot he was the guy until you mentioned there. I know that show slipped my mind completely. That's who was
And that's the VAR manager.
Yeah.
So, see, as much as Willie does his VAR review, surely the guy who should be doing the VAR review is Martin Atkinson.
You would think.
Yeah, there's just too many of the same. And again, I'm not bringing up we'll speak about kind of Nick Walsh later on, but there seems to be the same referees and the same VARs making very, very controversial decisions on a regular basis. That's kind of what my kind of theme is this week. Alan Muir, obviously in the Celtic game. Kevin Clancy. One thing to me, and a lot of people have messaged me this separately. Kevin Clancy's got the red card out before he's even off the ground. Like, have a look at that. I don't know if that's something that should be brought up, but is it a case of that he just goes to the red card because he sees a foot in the air? Is that what we should be doing here? Like,
no, you would need to ask Kevin.
But we're not going to find out. Do you know what I mean?
It doesn't matter what the situation is, whether you send them off a femtosecond after the tackle or whether you send them off 6 or 7 seconds later. Doesn't make it's the same outcome. So I was never one for rushing in. It doesn't matter if you wait a few seconds, but I think he probably was a bit sharp. But again, I'm not seeing a horrendously clear mistake, so I'm leaving it. I'm not seeing
a completely. What is the threshold? Is it reckless or dangerous? You can argue to a degree it's a dangerous tackle, but is it the threshold that they're setting, as Des says?
That's the wording.
Yeah.
But remember, that threshold is opined by humans, and we all think differently. So
correct.
Your brutality-ometer set differently from mine. So we'll never ever have 100% unanimity. But if it's not clear and obvious, then VAR shouldn't be anywhere near it.
Well, the next one I would say is clear and obvious because I think the referee does get it wrong. It's obviously the first goal for St Mirren where, in my opinion, Incialas catches himself. He completely catches himself. It takes 5 minutes to come to the conclusion. I do think, however, in the referee's defence, the camera angles here do paint a very different picture because if you look at it, the exact same angle that the Igaman red card was shown in the first camera, it looks as if there's a wee bit of contact by the St Mirren player. But then a reverse angle shows he clearly trips himself up. Now, to me, this is the perfect use of VAR because we have the different camera angles and Des, we come to the right decision here because it's a completely clear goal. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well, the notes that I've put it here, I've just put Inciala, he's caught his own feet.
Yes.
That's it. Nothing else to discuss.
People are saying as well he shouldn't be claiming for a foul. Now, the one argument I'll say to that is he maybe doesn't realise he's caught his own foot. He maybe just feels contact and is claiming for a foul, as you would in that scenario. Now, whether that's right or not.
Contact.
Yeah, but you don't. He maybe doesn't know. It's maybe too much going on for him to realise it catches himself. But VAR gets it right and overturns the decision because Clancy obviously sees some sort of contact, obviously, because why would he give a foul otherwise? But VAR overturns it and it's a clear goal. To me, there's no problem with the goal. Steve, anything wrong with this?
No, but I don't see anything wrong with the guy claiming that there was a foul. His own it must be embarrassing tripping yourself up in front of the whole world. So
exactly,
don't worry about that. But then, the same, everybody claims for throw-ins, everybody claims for corners and by kicks. You shouldn't be swayed with in for it. And if I had tripped myself up like that with millions of people around the world watching, I'd be trying to get myself out of it.
You've done it.
More than once.
But obviously adds to Rangers' miserable woes. Des, obviously we're talking about referees here, but we can't ignore what's going on at Rangers. It's not nice what I'm going to say here, but how is Philippe Clement still the Rangers manager?
That's not our place to make that call. We make decisions that are on the grass, not in the buildings. I think that under other circumstances, I would say.
Guys, I've got to go. The dogs are going mental. I'll try and come back on later.
Okay.
I would say that we're only here to make the comments on the grass. What happens inside the buildings is entirely up for the company to decide. Do I think as a football fan in general, I think he's been given a lot of grace.
Yeah, I remember. You know this as well. I remember pre-2012 how high the standards were at Rangers Football Club, and people like this will get a lot of people talking that I don't recognise Rangers Football Club anymore. This isn't the same club I grew up supporting. And again, I'm opening my colours here. This isn't the same club because there have been a lot better managers sacked for far less than what Clement is still there for. He's lost historically in the Scottish Cup, 16 points behind in the league, doesn't win a trophy. Yes, I understand obviously the news coming out about the takeover. There is so many arguments for removing the manager, and the club, for whatever reason, aren't making that decision. And I think there is a dereliction of duty at the football club. You remember, obviously, we've spoke up before about when you were in the game, Walter Smith, the standards he'd set, the standards at the club. This isn't the same at club anymore. It's not the same levels of standards. And that's the big issue for me here.
Well, again, and as you quite rightly said, you're also a Rangers fan, and that's fans are entitled to that opinion. What Steve and I could only do is we can only go with what we done on the grass. I don't know, but say it's not my place to comment on that.
But moving on to Ross County 3 and D1. Ross County in a very good run at the moment. Only one real incident of note. Mulligan, shirt pulling white, penalty wasn't given. Any arguments for that?
I thought it was a clear shirt pull. I'm quite surprised that VAR didn't get involved. Matthew McDermott, he did look at it, but to me it was it was very clear.
I can see it. I think there is definite reason for VAR to maybe get involved here. I don't know why they don't. Ross County flying, obviously, now. Dundee in a really, really tough position. Dundee United won, Motherwell 0. Nothing of note in that game. Couple of incidents in the Aberdeen game that I wanted to discuss. We'll move into the first one, the incident where Kilmarnock were given a penalty, Golders on Donnelly. VAR overturned it, however. Should they have overturned it?
Yeah, I think it was quite correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the Kilmarnock striker was in the act of shooting, and what he's done at that moment in time is when he's drawn his leg back, he's made contact with the Aberdeen defender. I don't think the Aberdeen defenders made contact with him. Certainly not deliberately. Yeah, I think it was just a natural coming together, and Nick Walsh, thankfully, it was overturned.
And then, obviously, Aberdeen had a goal disallowed for offside. A really good finish by Ockles, but he was in an offside position. I think a tremendous use of VAR here because it is so tight, but they draw the lines really well and get the right call.
Yeah, I think I was like everybody else, and obviously yourself, Scott. Nobody's seen that at the time. You think, oh, great goal, the boys finished it well. And then also look at the attacking phase of play, and then you see that the Aberdeen player was a yard, half a yard offside, and he's cut back for it. Yeah, VAR shouldn't be there to cut off goals and chop off goals, but that was the correct use of it, and that's why we should be using it to the best of its abilities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. We'll move into St Johnstone Hearts. Nothing really of note referee-wise. Obviously, we saw Hearts win again. Really, really good performance from Cabango scoring a double. St Johnstone running out of games. Callum Scott was referee. Don Robertson in VAR. I think Don Robertson is probably, again, a couple of times he maybe gets involved, but he gets him relatively quickly. There was a penalty shout. Both were relatively clear that VAR didn't really need to get involved. But again, like, I watched that game and it was terrible conditions. The game was obviously, like, the pitch was atrocious. But
absolutely dreadful.
But
that's like going to watch an amateur game.
Aye, but again, the way I kind of like VAR used, it's not highlighted all the time. I thought Callum Scott, to be fair to him, did a pretty good job. I just thought it was a decent TV game that wasn't constantly getting discussed about referees. It wasn't brought up constantly, and that's what I like.
And that's what you want.
Yeah,
that's what you want. Listen, I used to always wake up on a Monday morning and I would go to school and kids would say, "Oh, Mr. wrote 6." And they would call me, I'm like, "What do you mean 6?" Going, that's the score you got in the Sunday Mail. I'm like, do you know what? I'm quite happy with that. As long as my name's down on paper, I'm quite happy with that.
Do they still do that?
I don't know if they do.
I don't know. I've not seen it in a while. If anybody wants to confirm they do or not, fair enough. But that's something that maybe wouldn't be a bad thing. Maybe ratings and referees.
I'll guarantee you'll never get Steve Conroy 10 or Des Roach 10.
Love to see that. But obviously we've got some midweek action as well this week, where we do have a full SPFL Premiership list. Couple of big games. Obviously we've got Celtic Aberdeen on Tuesday, and we have Kilmarnock versus Rangers on Wednesday. I don't think, from what I can see here, that we do have any sort of referee declarations. I'd imagine they'll come through tomorrow. Monday, I'd imagine they'll come through.
Yeah, I'd imagine they'll push that through tomorrow.
But again, unless anything major happens, I would say here's to a quiet week, hopefully.
And again, sorry to follow us on Twitter, X, what you call it. There was really nothing to comment on this week.
Not really, no.
But if you find anything, whether it be in Scotland, Somalia, anywhere, let us know and we'll give you your opinion.
I will just say I've spent a lot of time over the past 40 hours kind of looking at other incidents. There's been a lot of VAR problems in the Premier League.
Yeah, I watched that yesterday. I watched it this morning. The Arsenal West Ham, the red card, and obviously the Bournemouth red card as well. Steve's different from me. Steve thinks the Bournemouth one wasn't a red card.
I think the Arsenal one's a brilliant use of VAR, because if he doesn't make that tackle, the West Ham player's through in goal. So I think it's a very good use of VAR.
I think it's a really good use of VAR, because when you look at the still and when you see it, take the tackle away, right? Take the tackle away. Where is the goalkeeper? The goalkeeper's like 20 yards outside his penalty area.
Yes.
And the most closing defender is the right back, who's like 30 yards to his left. One shot, and that's a goal. So that is probably the clearest evidence of denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity.
What do you think of the Bournemouth one? Because I saw Areola. I saw it in match today, and I saw them talking about it. Areola is saying that the VAR replays are misleading.
Steve said when we were chatting earlier, he said that he's won the ball. Okay, he's made. I wouldn't say he's won the ball. I said he's made contact with the ball, but it's the way he's went through it thereafter, and what's happened to the player with the studs up, constrained above his ankle. I think that merits every decision for serious foul play.
I do think it's a red card. I don't really have a complaint with it at all. I can see where he's coming from, because there are obviously different camera angles, but I think just getting the referee over to the VAR screen, I think, eliminates that. I think just let him make the call. That's kind of where I stand on it, and I think calling it misleading is a bit controversial, but The other one I was going to touch on was the Everton penalty. Everton should have had a penalty. That penalty should have been retaken, or at least another penalty given, because that Delict stops the Everton player. I can't remember who it was. I think it's Beto. I think he does stop him getting the ball. I think he gets the ball if he doesn't make that challenge. So to me, should that penalty be retaken, or is that another penalty? Like, how does that work?
Well, they never gave a penalty in the first place.
It was a penalty save that came from the saved penalty. So,
but it was a hold. It was an entire hold on Delict. He was grabbing, then Maguire. Maguire was flinging himself to the floor straight after it as well, which again made it ridiculous. No, that was a clear penalty for Everton.
Yeah, I think.
By the way, what a job David Moyes has done.
Unbelievable. Yeah. And if you want more Premier League information, check out our SM Media Premier League show. You'll hear that every Wednesday on the channel, so stay tuned for that. We're going to wrap up there, Des. It's been a fairly interesting week. I imagine a lot of people will be talking after what we've discussed regarding the two big games involving Rangers and Celtic. Fair play to Hibs and St Mirren for getting the results. But as we say, any sort of opinion you want, send us it over. But always a pleasure, Des. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Scott.
And we will see you all next week.
Okay, speak to you soon, mate.